boy, buckle up for this one, folks. I'm Essie Cupp. Welcome to Unfiltered. Remember the so-called QAnon Shaman? Jacob Chansley was one of the insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Allegedly, he left a note for then Vice President Mike Pence, which read, "Justice is coming." He did it all memorably, shirtless, in American flag face paint and a horned animal pelt hat. That, well, made him easy to find, and he's since been charged with civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, violent entry, and disorderly conduct, among other counts. He pleaded not guilty and is being held until his trial. Well, his lawyer put out a new defense ? In an interview with Talking Points Memo this week. Albert Watkins got a lot of attention for the wild and controversial way in which he described his client and the other Trump supporters who took to the Capitol that day on Trump's orders, according to them. I'll attempt to clean up certain words Watkins uses, but suffice it to say, they are ugly. Okay, part of the quote is as follows. A lot of these defendants, they're all F-word short bus people. These are people with brain damage. They're F-word R-words. But they're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our coworkers. They're part of our country. These aren't bad people. They don't have prior criminal history. F-word, they were subjected to 4+ years of goddamn propaganda, the likes of which the world has not seen since F-word Hitler. Holy hellballs, what a mouthful. In the wake of that interview, the attorney is claiming he used those impolitic words to get her attention. He claims his client is on the autism spectrum, and his, quote, civil pleas for attention to this issue have fallen on deaf ears. He says that once he used words that, quote, literally make people's jaws drop in disgust, then he got calls from media. To which I say, what? For one, his client, the QAnon Shaman, has gotten plenty of attention. His requests for special treatment in jail, including vegan meals, have been the subject of many a national news story. If he has a developmental disability, this is the first we are hearing of it. For another, it is not okay to use ableist slurs to describe autistic people, even and especially if it's just to get attention. Third, this hardly seems like an act of desperation, considering Watkins used these slurs to describe not just his client, but all the defendants connected to the insurrection. He defames them all as, quote, brain-damaged R-words. So yes, this is problematic and also revealing. It's not just the incendiary slurs he uses, including the R-word, to describe people like Chansley, again his own client. There's also the implication that Chansley and other Trump supporters were brainwashed by 4 years of propaganda, presumably spread by Trump, his allies, Republicans, and the media that supports them. And finally, there's the comparison between Trump and Hitler. There's a rule against that, and it's generally a good one. Naturally, the quote spread like wildfire on the internet, lighting up Twitter for its candor, profanity, and wildly inappropriate language to, again, describe Watkins' own client. But the part that I find most revealing and disturbing is that it's not actually a new defense in the era of MAGA. It's just the latest in a tranche of justifications and excuses made for MAGA world that asks, quote, reasonable people to suspend disbelief and pretend we don't know what we all know. Remember when Fox's own lawyers argued that Tucker Carlson, the network's top talent with millions of nightly viewers, isn't exactly to be trusted for facts? A U.S. district judge, in fact, wrote in an opinion dismissing a slander lawsuit against Carlson that Fox lawyers persuasively argued that given Mr. Carlson's reputation, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism about the statements he makes. Okay, then. I suppose Fox lawyers are saying then that all the Carlson fans who are not skeptical, and in fact do believe him, are unreasonable people. Or remember when Trump's former attorney Sidney Powell baselessly claimed that votes were illegally switched in Joe Biden's favor on Dominion voting machines. She's being sued by Dominion Voting Systems over those claims, and her lawyers are arguing, quote, no reasonable person would conclude that the statements were truly statements of fact. So I guess reasonable people can expect that former lawyers for the President of the United States, like Powell, will lie. It's kind of like when all the Trump apologists and translators would chastise reasonable people for, taking Trump at his word. Remember when then a member of the President-elect's Transition Committee, Anthony Scaramucci, said, don't take Trump literally, take him symbolically. So what's a reasonable person to believe? What can reasonable people believe in, if not news outlets supporting Trump, his lawyers, his defenders, and his fans? Keep in mind, these defenses are always coming from inside the House. The defense that Trump-rolled people are either liars or idiots isn't coming from his critics, but his allies, friends, supporters, and their attorneys. It's like they think this makes it better. That defending Trump and his lies, helping him to dismantle our democracy and divide us with irrational untruths, is okay because reasonable people should know they didn't mean it or didn't know any better. Please, if the onus is on reasonable people to decide whether or not to put their trust in Trump and his people, we have spoken. We do not. Now, if only reasonable people were the ones being listened to. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.